Let's take a look at how I might model this part. And so I'm going to rotate around a little bit and we'll look at it and we see that it extends beyond this edge a little bit. And then here it seems to be more flush with this edge. So I'm not sure if that was the design intent or whether it was intended that it be flush with the edges. I'm also going to look at the sketches. And so if I go to the first sketch and I edit that sketch, first of all, I notice that it doesn't have this red lock symbol on here. That indicates that the sketch is not fully defined. I'm going to edit that sketch, and when I edit that sketch, I see that I have a 1-inch circle placed at the origin, but the circle hasn't turned black. That means it isn't fully defined. And if I zoom in here, I see the center of the circle is over here when I assume that it was intended that the center of the circle be placed at the origin. So watch what happens when I drag that circle and I drop it on the origin. Now it turns black. That indicates that it's fully defined. And so with a similar process, we need to make sure that all of our sketches are fully defined. So I'm going to look at an alternative technique for creating this geometry. And I'm going to start a new sketch, and it really doesn't matter what plane you started on. I'm going to start it, in my case, on the XZ plane. And so I'll tell it to create a sketch. And I'm going to draw this inside circle right here. And so I'll draw the circle. I'm just going to put it out here someplace in space for now. And then I'm going to put a construction line from the origin up to the center of that circle. And I'm trying to decide how I want to do this. And I might end up doing it a slightly different way, but that's what I'll put in for now. And then I want this line right here to be a construction line, so I'll select it and I'll put X on the keyboard to change it to construction. And I also want it to be vertical. Now I could have created that vertically in the beginning and it would have saved me a step, but I just wanted to show how we can add those constraints after the fact. I'm then going to dimension this. Now I'm going to do the inside circle, so I'm going to do it as the 1-inch. So I'll dimension this and I'll put it in as a formula. So I'll do 1-inch minus, and I can't do this heavy math in my head, so I'll do the 0.135 times 2. And when we see that formula turn black instead of red, we know that it's a valid formula. And then I'm going to dimension the height from here up to the bottom of the circle. Now I can't select that unless I put a point there. So I'll create a point at that intersection, and then I'll dimension from this point down to the origin, and I'll dimension that as 0.25. So always use the origin as reference to define your geometry. The origin can't be erased, so we always know where it's at, and we know where we're at relative to space if we use that origin as our datum. I'm then going to put in these angled lines, and so I'm going to draw a line from here up, and I'll draw another line from here up, and I'm going to put a perpendicular constraint. So perpendicular constraint is the same as 90 degrees, but if you think you might want to change that angle, then use a dimension rather than the constraint. I'm going to assume that it's always going to be 90 degrees, so I'm going to select this line, and they're now 90 degrees. Notice though that they're blue, so I need to orient them symmetrically about this line in the middle. So I'll do symmetry. I'll select this line and this line. Now watch what happens when I select the middle line. They turn black. That lets me know that this sketch is fully defined. I'm then going to draw another line. I'll put this out in space. I want it to be horizontally. I want it to be a distance of 1 inch. And I might have drawn that line first to give me a sense of scale for the rest of the sketch. But I want the midpoint of this line to be at the origin. So I'll do a midpoint constraint. Notice that line turns black. It's all fully defined. Now I'm trying to decide whether to make another step on this. I could do this all in one sketch. It might be best if I do it in 2 sketches. And I think I'm going to trim out this portion right here. Now I don't have to trim that, but for the method I'm going to use, I think I want to trim that. And I think I want to change these 2 lines to construction. So I'll hit X on the keyboard and change those to construction. I'm then going to finish this sketch, and I'm going to rotate around a little bit, and I want to do a sketch for the countersink that we're going to put in here. And so let me rotate around a little bit more so I can see the dimensions that I want. And I was trying to decide, I could put this countersink sketch right here in this sketch. The results would be exactly the same. Or I could put it over here on this plane. And I'm just, to keep things simple, I'm going to do it as two sketches, but it could be done as one sketch added to this sketch. Or it could be put on this plane as well. But I'm going to do a new sketch, and I'm going to select this plane. And I'm going to then draw a line from the origin, and I'm going to come up vertically. And I actually want it to that point right there, but I have to project that point into my current sketch. So let's just put that line up that high, and then I'm going to P for project, and project that point from sketch number 1 into sketch number 2. And let me turn off the origin so we can see this better. And so I'll turn that off. So I have this line. Notice this white dot. So blue lines and white dots should keep you, or points, endpoints should keep you awake at night. I'm going to drag this up. Watch what happens to this line. When I drop it on there, now that white dot turns black. It's all fully defined. I want this to be a center line, so I'm going to right click on this line, and I'm going to change it to a center line. So I can have it either a normal, the way it is now, or as a center line. Now, it might be that you get the line that's underneath there, because there's two lines. There's a line from sketch number 1, and there's a line from sketch number 2. I need to make sure that I get that line from sketch number 2 as my center line. I also could have done this as a center line rather than as a construction line. I'm then going to draw a line. I'll come out here about like that, and I'm going to go up. Notice it's putting that perpendicular symbol on, and then I'll come out here at an angle, and then I'm going to go over horizontal line. I want it to put a horizontal constraint on here, or perpendicular to this line. I'm going to scrub that line. Don't click on it, just scrub it, and that puts that perpendicular symbol on there. Or I could add the horizontal constraint on there. I then want this diameter to be 0.165, so I put that in as a center line. So if I pick the center line, not the end point, if I pick the center line, and then I'll pick this point or the line, either one, I get that diametral dimension. 0.165 is my dimension. I'll put that in, and now it is fully constrained. I then want this angle, and whatever, I'm going to put in 30 degrees, but you could put in whatever angle that you want. That'll give us a total of 60 degrees on a countersink. You put in the diameter that you want. I want to put in the depth of this countersink relative to this point on the inside circle, and I'm going to put that in as 0.165. Now we can always change that later. So I'll dimension from this point to this point, and I'm having trouble. There, I got it. Now, if I have a lot of trouble, I would put a point in the sketch, 0.165, and so I have that. And then I want this point. If I try to drag this, I see I have this white point on here. I want this to be vertical to this point, so I'll put a vertical constraint between this point and this point. Now we see that's vertically, and then I want to constrain this in such a way that I no longer can move this line right here. And I want it to be, when this revolves around from a countersink, I want it to be up high enough on this that it actually cuts through the entire object. And so I could do this with the dimension, and then later change the dimension. Let's just put in a dimension, and then we'll edit it if we want to later on. So I'm going to dimension from here to here, and I'm also going to put that in as 0.165, but we may change that later on. Okay. Now we see that this countersunk hole is 0.5 from the front of the object, we're going to take care of that in a different way. And I put it on the origin, so we'll see how we're going to do that here in a minute. So I see the actual object is 2 inches long, and it is 0.5 the hole from the front, and the thickness is 0.135. So I'll finish that sketch and then we'll start to create our geometry. Let's start to create our solid geometry. And notice that I have created simple lines or arcs. I didn't create a double arc. Keep it as simple as I can. And we'll start to use our tools. So I'll do extrude. And I'm going to use this tool that's seldom used or is not as well known. I'm going to do a thin extrude. And then I'm going to select this circle. And I want it to go in 2 directions. So I'll tell it to go 2 sides. And so I want it to go this way a certain amount, and then I want it to go this way a certain amount. And then I'm going to put in that distance. So for the shorter distance, I want to do this one as the 0.5. And I accidentally hit enter, but that's no problem. I'll just edit that feature. So I'll do edit feature because I wasn't complete yet. And then for this distance, it's the 2 inches, but I need to go minus the 0.5 that I've already done. So I'll do 2 inches minus 0.5. And then for the thickness, I want to do 0.135. And I need to do that in both directions. So here we see that it's only doing on one of them. And I'll do for the second one, I'll do 0.135. Now I need to make sure that it's going towards the outside. So I drew the inside circle. So I need to make sure the thickness is going towards the outside. So let's look at this from the directly looking at it. And I see that I have it going to the inside. So I need to flip that direction. So I'll say side 2, that got the first extrusion. I'll do side 2 on both of these. So now both of these are going to the outside. And so I'll rotate this around. And we see that we have our start on this. We'll go ahead and save the file, and then we'll continue with the next step. So in doing the next step, I need to make this sketch visible again. So when it was consumed by this first feature, it became hidden. So I'll turn on the visibility or just click on the eyeball to make that sketch visible again. And then I have this base that is 0.2 thick. So I'll do that thin extrusion again. So I'll select thin extrusion. I'll select this line and I want to go in 2 directions, 2 sides. And I'll drag this so I can see it a little bit. And I'll drag this direction. And so again, I want to go 0.5 along this direction, and then the 2 minus 0.5 along that direction. And then I need to put my thickness. My thickness is 0.2, and so I'll put 0.2 up here, and I also need to do the 0.2 down here. And so we'll do that wall thickness 0.2. Now notice that it's going down. I want it to go up, so I'll flip this to side 2 so that it's going up, and I'll flip this to side 2. But Fusion assumes that I want to cut this geometry out. I don't want to cut it, so I'll change this to join those 2 together. All right, I'm going to hide that sketch 1, and then I want to revolve this sketch right in here. Now, right now I have an open profile, so if I try to do revolve and I try to select that sketch, it doesn't get it automatically. So I need to edit that sketch. And I need to close this distance between here and here. It's hard to see because that angle, but you see this is open right here. Let's try extending that. So I'll do extend, but when I do that, it may or may not give me an error. It gives me a warning, but it is no problem. It resolves that. Then I'm going to do revolve. And we select that geometry. And because I had a center line in there, it automatically found the center line. Then you can add your fillets to the geometry. And if you decide that you want to change that countersink, then just make the sketch visible, and you can right click and tell it to show the dimensions, and then you can double click on any of these dimensions to change them to whatever you want. I'm going to turn off the visibility of my sketches, and I have some images that I imported to get my dimensions. And I'm going to put some fillets on here. I'm going to show a slightly different way of doing some of these fillets. And so I'm going to do fillet, and I'm going to select a full round fillet for this face. We see that it puts that, no matter what I change that thickness, then that fillet will go all the way across here. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'll do another fillet, and I'm in full round. So I'll select this. It's asking for me to select my center face. I'll select that center face, and it'll put in that full round fillet for me. And then I'm going to do these fillets as edge fillets. So I'll do fillet again, and I'm going to do just a fillet, which will give me an edge fillet. Now I prefer to put in these corners first, and so I'm going to go around, but it depends on how you want this to look, the order in which you put your fillets. And I'm going to do those as 0.05. Now I could go ahead and select the rest of these edges, but I want to do these first. I put in 5 instead of 0.5, and we'll see that. Now actually, when I did that, it went all the way around here. That's a ½ inch fillet. I meant 0.05, and so now we see those fillets in here. And I'm going to do fillet again, and I'm going to select this edge in here, and I'll get the other edge, the same edge on the other side, and I'll do 0.05, and I'll put those in, and then I'm going to do a fillet. The fillets depend on what you want, but I'm just going to do these like this. All right, you may or may not have wanted this fillet and the corresponding fillet onto the other side. Now we end up with a situation, we're going to 3D print this. Now, no matter how we 3D print it, we're going to have an overhang. The question is, which way is the overhang going to be the most difficult issue? So here we're printing, it's going to be unsupported out here, but can this geometry support it? And then the other option is, no matter how we orient that, we're going to have unsupported edges. So we have to decide which way will work best for our printer. And once we decide that, then we have to orient this with the z-axis relative to how we want to print this. And so I'm going to assume that we want this to be the z-axis going along here. So I'm going to rotate. And so I'll select this body as what I want to rotate, and I'm going to just select it anywhere on that body. But then I'm going to tell it I want to do a rotate. I want to set the axis as the x-axis. So I'll turn on the visibility, and I'll select that x-axis, and I could just preview rotate that around. And let's say I want to rotate that by 90 degrees. And so now I have this where my z-axis is going up if that's the orientation that I want to print this.